Tracy Amigos, former football coaches turned insurance agents to talk about Texas Aggie football.
All right, guys. Well, welcome to episode 13. Who in the world would have thought we'd have gotten 13 episodes out of this when we started?
It's a miracle.
This is Trace Amigos. These are three guys that all used to be former high school coaches and have gotten out of that and became Rollo associates. And we now sell insurance. And I'm in Hallsville, Seth's in Gilmer, Mark's in Carthage. If we can ever help you out, give us a shout. But this is our excuse to still be able to watch, break down film, and talk football, specifically A&M football. And I think we've all agreed that I don't know if we'll ever get this grown to anything that's profitable money-wise, but this is our excuse to still get on here and talk football, so we love doing it. But before we get into what we do, which is we'll talk about the New Mexico game, obviously, and then we'll break down what we're seeing out of Auburn and what to expect out of that game. But want to give a shout-out to Deep East Texas A&M Club here in Northeast Texas, based out of Longview. Great group for Aggies to get together, network, hang out, and this weekend they're going to have a game-watching party at the McCann Street Bar and Grill. And so that'll kick off about, I think, 6 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken, is when they've got that going on. You can see the address there on the graphic. Would love to see y'all there. I know me and my wife are going to try to go. And so would love to see anybody that wants to join us. Great opportunity to network with other Aggies, hang out, hopefully watch a win on Saturday night, and just hang out with some good Aggies. So just a little background on me. Like I said, I spent 10 years coaching. Got fortunate enough to coach at Carthage for 6 of those years, where I got to be a part of one state title in 2013, unlike Mark, who was there. He's older than me. He was there a little bit longer. He's got 5 of them.
How is it possible to coach there that long and only get one? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, well, yeah, I got it. I should have been a part of more, but anyway, got out of it. Now associate for Rollo, and so do that. I'll let Seth introduce himself, then we'll go on to Mark, and then we'll break down the New Mexico game. So, Seth, tell them about yourself, boss.
My name is Seth Drennan. I coached for 16 years before opening my office in Gilmer, and like Matt said, I've always, when I got out of coaching, I just continued to watch film. I guess that's my hobby, and people hunt, people fish. I do play a little golf, but not like the real hobby is like just watching film, and seeing what coaches are doing out there schematically. And so I am grateful for this because it's a reason to watch it and then blow hot air about it afterwards, which is one of my favorite pastimes as well. And so anyway, this is a lot of fun. I have 0 state championship rings. I coached a lot of really good kids. I don't know if they were quite SEC quality kids, but they were really good kids. And anyway, it was a lot of fun, and coached in a lot of different places with a lot of different types of communities. We ran multiple different offenses, coached defense a little bit too. So very Swiss Army knife background, which makes it fun to watch film because you got a little bit of everything in there. And anyway, this is a blast. And yes, the Deep East Texas A&M Club is awesome. I took my kids last month to their social, which was at in Longview at the Arboretum. It's a concert. It was a blast. Probably 15 or 20 Aggies there. Talked nonstop about ball the whole time. My kids were people were constantly, being nice to them and being very welcoming to them, and they had a blast. So anyway, I think you'll get a lot out of going into some of these Deep East Texas A&M Club things. You know how it is. You get a bunch of Aggies together, it's going to be fun. You get a bunch together, you're gonna have a good time. So
I just want to warn the audience, if they happen to hear some cattle, we're on my back porch, and I've got a calf that's over here, and the mama's back over here, and they're not sure how to get to each other right now. So just ignore that if you hear that in the background. But Mark, tell us, since we all look up to you, Mark, you're the wise one in the group. You've got the most experience.
Please.
You're almost on Medicare. So tell us about your experience and your 5 state titles, because Lord knows we all look up to you for that.
Okay, so I have a Rollo insurance office here in Carthage, Texas, the home of champions, where I coached for 10 seasons. I was at multiple schools in the East Texas area, but I coached 10 years at Carthage. I have technically 6 state championships because I'll count my baseball one too, since I am a baseball guy.
Sorry.
Just for the record, I did win football and baseball in the same season, in the same school year. And it's interesting that Seth gave us the admission that he's kind of full of hot air. I've never heard an offensive coach actually admit that, so that's good to hear. And then I just want to say, you said if you get a bunch of Aggies together, nothing bad. And I'm like, did you not see the ticket pull this week or something? I'm like, so
Hey, I bet they had a good time.
100%. Maybe that one's not 100%. No, love to talk football. I am the defensive guy, so I'm the guy that
that can always find the problems while we find the solutions.
Yeah, we have to coach on that side of the ball. It's a little bit different. It's not just about drawing stuff up and then being mad when kids don't execute. You have to execute on defense, and it is what it is. But I love talking ball. Spent my whole life since college, all that stuff. Being a part of football has just been my life. So my daughter likes to say that I have too many stories sometimes because she's heard all the road stories about all the places. I worked at North Texas.
And please explain to the audience, because I'm sure this was a dream of yours that your daughter would be doing this right now. What exactly is your daughter doing at North Texas right now?
My daughter is a member of the North Texas Dancers, so she dances at football games, basketball games, does appearances, does a lot of stuff, competes nationally. She's a national championship winner already at the collegiate level, so she's following, and she finally got
there you
her
go.
home.
And Seth's wife was obviously accomplished dancer as well, and has her own studio, so maybe somewhere down the road they can cross paths and work together. So.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna be hitting Seth up for that when she gets out of college and we need to pay off some loans.
There you go.
Anyway, let's talk about Aggie football.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about New Mexico State game. Obviously, we kind of knew that going into that game, New Mexico obviously doesn't have the athletes we have, and I think that Saturday night watching
for a running back.
As far as we do have
a
running back. Yeah, me and Seth talked about that. But as far as maybe what you saw Saturday night, if you're just a fan, you look at the score, it's 38-3. You probably feel like that's a letdown. But in the situation that the A&M team is right now, especially with depth at running back, I think that's the key. With the Klein offense, it's always going to be run heavy, relying on that running back, relying on the running portion of your offense, the rushing portion. I think what you saw in the first quarter is what this team is capable of doing. Now, quarter second, third, fourth, you got to look at the fact they realize that they're down their top 2 running backs. They've got their guy that was supposed to be number 3 in August is now your number 1. Your number 4 guys now your number 2 guys. So you understand you have 2 games left in this season that are going to really – you've got some goals, you got some aspirations that are in reach, and you don't want to jeopardize that by trying to run up a score on New Mexico. So while I think all of us would have liked to have seen a bigger spread and more points scored, I think you have to understand the situation this team's in and what they were thinking going into it, and kind of just, I think it was intelligent. I think it showed them understanding the situation they're in and not just trying to win today. And so my good was the first quarter, because I thought the offense was absolutely on fire, especially when Daniels was in there. They were able to run. I love the 12 personnel. If you're not familiar with that, it means 1 back, 2 tight ends. And I love the use of that, which we've used 12 personnel all year, and that tight ends are a big part of Klein's offense. But we really started incorporating the tight ends more into the passing game, which I've really wanted to see all year. And Seth's going to talk about boots and nakeds, and we've talked about that all year, wanting to see more of that. And I'll let Seth talk about that. But really incorporating those tight ends into the run game. Tight ends had 9 receptions for 178 yards. There were some games that our passing, we barely hit 178 total passing yards. So I was really excited to see that. And I think that's going to be something you're going to see the next 2 games, and then if we're able to get into the Atlanta and we're able to get those things. And the scary thing is he missed another big play. This is one Seth's pulling up. You see the tight end's going to come across. He's at the top of the formation, and he's going to run a post here, dig across, and he's wide open. And Seth's going to talk about it was overthrown. Yes, a more athletic tight end. If we had the guy from Bowling Green or the tight end from LSU or some of these other guys that we know, unfortunately, are probably a little more athletic than what we have right now, probably makes that catch. But you can see if he catches that, he's on the 50, and there's not a soul on his side of the field.
Here, let me give you my defensive analysis of what happened. That's a bust. Okay.
Yeah,
just a little bit.
I understand that, Mark. I understand. But the fact is, if we complete that pass, he's going to run for a long time. And so that 178 probably goes up over 200 easy. And so you had a chance to not only you had a great game, but even to make it even bigger. And so my hope is, and I'll let Seth talk about what he saw and some of the great things he pointed out. My hope is that they're going to continue to grow this tight end role, even though we're almost to the end of the season. I think, and we've talked about it quite a bit, we don't have the GoDaddies outside that we wish we did. And so you got to figure out where you can get those passing yards. And so hopefully with using the tight end, we can do that. So that was my good, the first quarter offense and the use of the tight ends in the pass game. So Seth, what you got, boss?
Yeah, man, I agree with you there, and that's where as we watched that first quarter take place. This was the first time I felt like the offense had a true identity, and I think that has a lot to do with kind of you just look at Colin Klein's timeline offensively. He gets hired, and then we don't get the transfer portal was very defensive heavy. And don't get me wrong, Jabray Barber, Cyrus Allen, Trey Watson, there were definitely some skill guys brought in, but it wasn't. Think about that DB room and how much it was blitzed, right? It was definitely more. And Nick Scorton, the biggest acquisition of the portal, defensive, an edge player. So the offensive, it felt like Klein was put in here, and this is just my feeling. He was put in here with like, hey, there's some tools in the shed on offense. You're gonna have to make it work. We're gonna put a few more in there, but we gotta really the shed on defense has to be completely gutted. It has to be completely rebuilt. And so I really feel like people talk about, is it really a year 0 or is it year 1? Yeah, I could say it's probably year 1 for the defense, but it feels like a year 0 for the offense. And typically, when you're in a year 0, it takes a while for the identity to emerge. And then when you're dealing with a 2 quarterback situation, yeah.
And let's be honest, we've all worked for head coaches that were offensive-minded coaches, head coaches that were defensive-minded coaches. At the end of the day, the head guy gets to pull the strings, and Elko knew, hey, I'm a defensive dude. We're going to make sure my side of the ball is taken care of. And don't get me wrong, Elko understands it takes both sides, and he's a head coach. But at the end of the day, he's still a defensive-minded guy. So
and that's what and that's why he hired Klein. Like if you look at if you go back to the rumor mill of who was being interviewed for that OC job, there wasn't a single air raid 10 personnel guy even interviewing for that job. It was all guys who like tight ends. Yeah, it was all guys who were prolific run game guys, run the quarterback guys. And so Elko definitely has a style he wants played on offense, which I'm all for. And Colin Klein, it was top of my list on that. That's why when he got hired, I was like, are you kidding me? I've never had the guy I want to get hired. And don't get me wrong, has he been perfect? No, the passing game definitely has some warts. How much of it's personnel based? How much of it's scheme coaching based? Well, we'll know for sure next year. This year it's been such a patchwork thing. He's been having to run 2 offenses because what he can do, what he does with Connor Wigman and what he does with Marcel Reed is completely different. And I know people just go ahead.
I was going to say, and you saw that. The 1 or 2 drives Wigman came in, it was totally. We took the tight ends out. We were going 5 wide.
Yeah.
We were going 0 person. I mean, just so you're absolutely right.
It's totally, and honestly, that was such a mistake. I mean, I get what they were doing because that's like a scrimmage game. They were trying to say, well, if we're going to use Connor this year, it's going to be in this situation. And man, it was a disaster. You might as well just let him go in there and run the 12 personnel offense and just don't call quarterback run. I mean, anyway, but long story short, and that's what those games are for. They probably did just get on the whiteboard and just that whole thing off. Like
Isn't that what you guys do all the time on offense? That's just,
true. That's true. Yeah.
you have a whiteboard
So
behind
it was.
you and you sell insurance. I mean, you guys love a whiteboard.
Yeah.
Once it's in your
That's
blood,
true.
you can't get it out. You can't get it out.
It's hard to. But yeah, man, the 12 personnel, that's what, if you went back and watched, his Kansas State films last year when he had that offense humming, they were in 12 personnel most of the time. Their H-back was one of their biggest playmakers. He always caught the ball, screens, everything. So that's what I mean by this felt like identity. The first quarter felt like his Colin Klein's identity. And a couple things that I thought were huge positives that we saw out of that game was we'll start with the bootleg, because in the South Carolina game, I was super critical of the bootleg design they called, and when they called it, the situation and everything. And I just thought it was probably his worst call of the year. And so to go back to that, I have that play right here, and I'm going to pause it real quick. So they're going to run bootleg left into the boundary. This tight end is going to be your flat route. You got to have a post and a fade up top. This backside end on a naked boot, we're going to want him to chase the running back so that Marcel can flank the defense, but he has not done that all game. These defensive ends were coached to, you've got the quarterback, we will take care of the running back, do not let Marcel's legs beat you. So in this situation, when he called it, we should have known that was not going to be the case. What I didn't like about it was the tight end's flat route was like a slam and release route. He runs it pretty badly as well, but there was no hot throw for Marcel. We're leaving him out to dry right here. Now, he should have thrown it away. I will say that as well. But when you call a play and you put a redshirt freshman quarterback into this kind of situation, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, it could be bad. I would love for him to throw it away, and I think a more mature Marcel does. Go ahead, Coach.
Well, and I'll tell you, just like you said, it was a slam and flat. He should have slammed down. There was zero slam and no flat. He just kind of just stood in no man's land like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? So as much as you're right about Marcel, he should have thrown that ball. That is about the worst route I've seen out of
It's terrible.
tight end. I mean, I'm telling you, at the 4A level,
terrible.
and I coached with Mark, and I coached tight ends when I first got to Carthage. Mark can attest, he was in the press box with me when I was coaching tight ends. He heard me take some chewings. If my tight end would have gave that rep, he would have heard me getting chewed out again. So I agree with you, but that's a terrible rep.
Only guy I know that could have chewed you out worse, Matt, would be Brian Kelly from LSU. I mean, you didn't take any that bad, but you took some bad ones.
Yeah.
Oh, no
but
doubt.
I took
no
it well,
doubt.
Mark. I took it well.
And then he'll punch the table and make the water bottle jump afterwards too. And,
there you go.
But so I like it when offensive coordinators say, "Hey, this is something we're going to do, and we're going to have an answer to continue to do it." And I think obviously Marcel's legs, we want to run him in the run game too. But man, the naked boot game. You get that guy on the perimeter on a naked boot with a run or a throw option, that is gold. And so what we saw happen was early in the game, they ran 2 bootlegs. They ran 4 total bootlegs in this game. We'd run 4 the whole season leading up to this point. So I think you're going to see an emphasis on some naked boot. And check out Theo's route. Tell me this isn't improvement from our tight ends, how quick he gets his eyes around. Because in the game, I thought this was an RPO. I was at the game, and when it happened, I was like, ooh, that's a slick little RPO. It was not an RPO. It was a naked boot. And how do you know? Well, you can watch how the offensive line blocks it. They are not run blocking. That is turn back protection on a naked boot, where it looks like zone, and then they're going to turn and try to pin the guy to the inside gap. And so the fact that he felt pressure, there was no boot. And that's how you're supposed to be as a quarterback. After the fake, if you've got pressure now, throw it now, right into the pressure to your hot route. And Theo was scooting, because if you get out to that flat quick and flank the defense there right off the pressure, that's really hard to cover properly. And so really good execution here. And then I really like how crafty they got on the next bootleg, where it's still a naked boot, but we're running it out of a very unorthodox boot formation. So you'll see unbalanced here. We have the tight end bunch, and the tight end is in a flex position, which means he's got a little bit wider split, and we've got the X over here. And so Thor's not eligible right here, but what they're doing is the C gap defender is who's going to mess up your naked boot. Is who's going to be chasing your quarterback to make him throw off platform. Well, now you've got Thor here to pick up the C gap defender, and you'll see that's exactly what he does. I'm going to pause it right here. So you see this cat right here would have been chasing. Now is he going to catch Marcel? Probably not. But he's running at his hip, making the throw a little more awkward, and now he's pinned, and Marcel's got him flanked. We've got him flanked, and then that allows him to step into that throw and throw an absolute laser to a guy who's covered pretty well.
Yeah, I was about to say that wasn't bad coverage. That guy was on his hip.
No,
we talked about it earlier. I don't know, maybe it was just that night. But his arm looked live, very live. I mean, everything he was throwing was on a dime, and it was on a line.
Three things I see there. Number one, if I'm coaching tight ends, which I never did, thank God. But if I am, 17's going to play a lot. That's a beautiful, beautiful job on two different plays of doing two separate things that tight ends have to do. Number one, recognize a hot from a force player and get your head around for the quick throw to allow him to throw it quickly. And then the second one, to really set himself up, put his butt in the right position to cut that C-gap player off and not get out-athleted there. And then the receiver here actually does a good job of using the point of contact where that guy's going to collision him to use the collision against him.
Create separation.
And because that's the only separation you got. And we don't see that a lot from the receiver room.
Nope. I agree with you there. My other positives I saw was, and I didn't have time to get all these clips, otherwise the podcast would be 3 hours long. But the four verts, we ran four verts against the cover 3 safety and hit the seam route to Theo one time. And we had not hit that route yet. We had tried to throw it a couple times early in the season and had never quite seen it, and it had been there. So the fact that Marcel saw it, drove that ball into that seam hole inside of the free safety in the corner was really nice to see, because that's how you get a team out of cover 3. If they're going to sit there in cover 3 to stop the run and you hit that seam a few times, oh, man, they're going to want to put two safeties on the field or put you in a two-safety
all
look.
Of a sudden now you
and then that's right. The RPO game looked better. Marcel operated it pretty well. I think they ran 4. I have a spreadsheet here. They ran 4 RPOs. And I thought he was 100% on them. One of them, he ended up scrambling for 10. We're going to watch that later. That was not his fault, and I'll break that down more later. And the play action game they ran off the power look, I thought was amazing. That was the very first play of the game where we had a misconnection. It would have been a touchdown if it had been slightly not overthrown, or if today was a little bit faster, would have ran it down and gone and scored. And also the red zone percentage. So this is what I really wanted to. So whenever we were talking about Klein before the Notre Dame game, I brought up his red zone effectiveness, and it took it a little while. It started off a little slow, but like anything, give it some time for the sample size to emerge. So this is our all games red zone percentage in the SEC. I just boiled it down to SEC teams. So all games we are at 72.5%, which is pretty good. And then when you break it to just conference games, we are in number 1 at 81% with 17 touchdowns and 21 red zone tries. Now, I wish we had more tries.
But the good consistency in this is that Auburn's at the bottom of both. So that makes me feel good.
That makes your part of it a little bit easier, doesn't it, Brown?
Yeah.
No doubt. So just for reference, that offense you watched last year that you're watching now in Arkansas, 51.52%. And in conference, you'll see Arkansas. Hey, Bobby's doing a little better this year at 66. But still, last year it felt like we couldn't convert in the red zone. And what Klein's offense does with the horizontal stretch of the defense and the misdirection is great for the red zone when the field is now compressed and the vertical stretch is no
here's what's
longer
crazy
there,
about that is this over here. It should be 30 out of 40, but we threw that pick right before halftime that we shouldn't have. But
no doubt, yeah.
Anyway. No, that's all good stuff, man. Good stuff. So my bad on the offense, and I've harped on this all stinking year, and I think so has Elko. If you watched his press conference, I think he's had about all he could take of this too. But we had 2 turnovers. You never want to have turnovers. Had 2 of them, both INTs. One of them right before half, where you're in a position to score at least 3. You took at least 3 off the board, probably 7. And then the other one was a quarterback that I'm not sure how much he's bought in right now. Just body language, and we'll talk about that under the ugly. But turnovers and penalties. We had another 71 yards in penalties. Like I said, if you watched the press conference, you saw Elko and you heard him. He's as frustrated, I think, as anybody. And I keep saying that we've got to get that under control. It's going to cost us a game, and I just pray that it doesn't cost us one of these next two games. But that was my ugly, or my bad for the week, was the turnovers and the penalties. So, Seth, what you got?
Yeah, so my uglies is in the RPO game there was a really poor route ran, and so I thought we would start with the good example, and the good example is a couple here from I just went and found some. Here's one that Duke ran, and what I want you to watch is they're running the RPO off this safety, and they're going to run a bang 8 post, a glance. I don't know if I've heard all the different terminology, but it's not meant to be chunked. Yeah, it's not meant to be chunked 70 yards down the field. It's meant to be thrown pretty quick. And the idea is you throw it where the safety was. Safety comes downhill to stop the run, throw it where he was. And there's a good example of it. Here's a good example from against us, Mississippi State, where it is thrown a little bit more down the field. They ran the exact same concept here. He's reading that safety. Safety comes downhill, puts a little more air on it based on the leverage of the receiver had there, and that other safety coming. That was a ridiculously good throw by Van Buren. But anyway, so that is some good examples. Here we are against New Mexico State. Jade in the slot, number 9, is going to run the glance. That's what he's going to attempt to run. And then we get the safety. Yeah, we get the safety to buy, and you'll see what ends up happening here. And in the game, people may think, well, what was Marcel doing on that? But I want you to focus on the slot. He gets rerouted way too hard, and then he just kind of gives up on the route. And that ain't very good, okay? So that would have been potentially – because that did exactly what we wanted it to do.
Well, I mean, he didn't attack his leverage. He didn't attack his leverage. He ran away from him so the guy could press him. I mean, that's the worst route ever.
It's pretty bad.
No doubt about it.
We've seen some bad
ones. No doubt about it.
Yeah. You're exactly right. If he runs that route correctly, attacks leverage, makes that guy get in the back pedal, and then all of a sudden now you can stick your foot and get across his face, this guy's gone, and you're right, he probably houses it. But it's like you talked about, Seth, like we've got to do something in the offseason with some of these receivers. They all seem like good kids, but, man, what'd you say, good kids get your butt kicked? Is that what you said last week, Mark?
Outlaw.
Yeah.
Good kids get your butt
kicked. Yeah. What you're going to see happen in the offseason is that a lot of different kids will be running these routes next year, but we'll wait for the offseason to talk more about that. So, but yeah, that's what, and that my problem is that we're going to have to punish aggressive safeties, and that was an option. That we're trying to do it right there, and weren't able to because of that. And then the interception, I wanted to kind of show y'all this, like the scheme. The scheme was good, but
we're talking about Reed's interception, or with?
Oh yeah, definitely. Reads right before half because they were running 2-minute offense and it looked pretty good up until this point. So what you're going to have is they're going to run 4 verticals, all right, from a 3-by-1 look, and you're going to have the outside guy is going to run what we call a fade out, where it looks like the outside release vertical, and then they're going to stick it and work to the sideline. And Bostic it runs a pretty good route right here, and I kind of, when I first watched this and I didn't watch the end zone view, I was like, why didn't Marcel throw that to the pylon? Because there it is right there. That's probably a touchdown if he throws that to the pylon. Or a miss, an incompletion, right? Because that's where the leverage was. That's where the grass was. But I see why he might not have got it to the pylon now, because when you watch the end zone view, which I'll fast forward to here.
Yeah, you had somebody at his feet.
This is really bad pass protection by Dewberry, which, we've seen it multiple times. There's a reason he's not a starter. But right here, the center, he just ends up pushing him right into him. He ends up working against.
Well, and the problem is the reason he pushes him like that is he's slow getting over to him. He sees the guy coming, and he doesn't move his feet and get over there to him.
Go back.
So that's his only option.
Again. I didn't see where it came from, so I want to look at it one more time.
It was a twist. They spiked him and he got around.
I want to see what protection they're in. Oh, they turned it, and he has to bounce off of him, and he's got late help.
Yeah. And we already. The other thing is we already have talked about our center. He doesn't have great feet either. He doesn't slide
he
well
does not.
either. But between the two
Not
of them,
very athletic.
that's a bad combination right there
I'm
on
But
that.
if we
gonna
pause
say
this,
that interception is definitely O-line right there because
yeah,
that dude's open if he throws it where it's supposed to be thrown.
And the way Reed was throwing it that night, I mean, he was throwing as hard as he was throwing the ball, he was
that's
not going to miss that spot. I have a hard
I
time
agree,
believing
and
he would.
that's in his bag. That's in his bag because that fade out needs to be thrown on a laser because now
Yeah,
you've created that. And if he puts a one ball on that pylon right there, you got a
yeah.
chance for a
I mean, the
touchdown.
cornerback's got
So
his
the
hips
scheme was
completely.
good,
Yeah, the
pass pro no
cornerback's got
good.
his whip, everything. Yeah, yeah. I agree.
Worst,
Yeah, and
worst,
I agree.
I usually use my go ahead.
worst case
Go
scenario,
ahead,
you
Mark.
got first and goal at the 1 because he catches it. He has to dive for it and catch
Yeah,
it, but it's thrown to
right,
his outside.
right. That's right. Yeah. So, and my I usually cop out on the bad and talk about my TBD, but it was good to see, like it always is in these games, the Miles O'Neal get his reps and look like he's got a pretty good little live arm, and then Ashel Bethel Roman, a kid that really showed out in his series, scored his first touchdown. He looks like he's got a little bit of juice, so
Yep.
there might be a guy that you see running more routes next year, right there, as well. All right, I'm done.
All
Wait,
right, so my ugly, and I'm gonna get on a little soapbox here, man, because I'm dealing with this at my own house, to be honest with you. So I stole this quote offline. It says, "Your body language is a billboard for your mental toughness and your maturity." And look, I get it. Wigman this year didn't go the way he wanted it to go. Heck, I'll be honest. If you go back and watch our August podcast, it didn't go the way we expected it to go for Wigman. I get it. You're disappointed. You're upset. Put your hand down. Focus on defense. So I get it. But here's the deal. You're a part of a team. I used to tell kids all the time, you want to play an individual sport, go play tennis or golf. This is a team sport. And so you've got to understand that we've got 2 regular season games left, potentially an SEC championship game, and then a bowl game or playoffs, whatever. So we've still got, hopefully, a lot to play for at this time. It's not time for you to pout and sulk. And I'm sorry, his body language the whole time he was out there looked like he was going through the motions. It didn't look like he was excited to be out there. And I stole this from Tom Brady. If you watch what he was talking about and how, when he got to the Patriots, he wasn't the starter, and he said, whenever you get an opportunity, treat it like no one else does. Pretend like it's the Super Bowl on game day. So that, I hate to tell Wigman, but everything he's putting on film right now, every time he gets a chance to step on film on the field, is what all these coaches, look, he's going in the transfer portal. I don't think there's any secret about that. Every one of those coaches he's going to be talking to is going to be asking about that. And all the NIL deals he's going to want at these new schools, they're going to be, all this is going to be film they're going to look at. And so, like I said, I'm dealing with this at my own house. I got a freshman girl that was put on varsity 5A volleyball this year. Didn't get to play as much as she wanted to. And we had a lot of talks about that as well, about body language and maturity and understanding your role on a team. You are a freshman. And I get it. Wigman's a junior, and he thought it was going to be his time to shine and all that. But, man, it came across very selfish, just his body language and how he carried himself on Saturday night when he got his chance. He could have used that as an opportunity to show not only Elko that, hey, I can still do this, but every other coach he's probably going to talk to in this offseason about coming to their unit. Hey, look at what I know. I know Reed was the starter, but when I got my opportunities, I went out there and produced. And, I was very disappointed with how he carried himself. And on the flip side, O'Neal looked really good, and hopefully he's got a bright future, but just kind of disappointed. I think Wigman's going to probably regret how he's probably taken the last couple weeks and responded to that. So, what was yours, Seth? What was your ugly?
Well, and this is something that is running back to. I mean, I'm not even going to focus on who they are, But I mean, granted, technically starting our running back 3 right now. If you go back to the beginning of the season, and but like that's an issue that while I'm like, hey, running back 2 is ugly, we're gonna have to have one. Like, I don't know who it's going to be. I've heard rumors last week about Dalton Brooks, and I'm like, please don't take him from safety. I heard rumors about Javon Thomas, who used to play at South Oak Cliff. Bussy working it a little bit more and having some things ready to go for him. That's a lot to ask of a freshman to play a third position in the season. Anyway, so I don't know what RB2 is going to be. I know it's probably really Marcel because these next 2 weeks we will see Marcel unleashed with his legs. I could see him with 10 carries at least each game, if not more. But you still don't want to run him 30 times either. So it's a game that Klein's going to, once again, he's got more stuff to deal with. But RB2 is an issue. Of course, I covered the backup guard situation. We really need Bisantis to be back as soon as possible. And the wide receiver room, which is why I think we're seeing so much 12 personnel because, man, if they're not a net positive when they're on the field, they just don't need to be on the field, right? There was a year at Overton where I realized pretty quick that I didn't have the receivers that I'd had in other seasons, and I didn't have but we had a bunch of big, tough kids. So we stopped playing with receivers. I put one of my tackles in 44 and made him a tight end, and we just started running everybody over. Anyway, so
Hey, you do what you got to do, man.
Hey, I just decided, I was like, why am I putting 3 receivers on the field if we're not getting anything out of them? I got a backup tackle who's almost playing. I was like, I won't put him out there and let him block down on somebody. So that's what we did. And yeah.
In 2014, we won state at Carthage in 2013. 2014, I'm receivers coach, and we're playing at Hallsville at that night. And I remember we could get behind their safeties, we just couldn't complete it. And Scott was like, I want to run double post again. I want to run double post. He goes, who do we need to put out there? And I said, Coach, we got one that can catch it, but he can't run out of sight in a day. And I got another one. He can get behind that safety, but he couldn't catch it with Elmer's glue on his hands. It wouldn't matter. I mean, and so, yeah, you have to adapt sometimes to what you have on your roster.
Oh, no doubt. Look, I even started running. We started running the tunnel sweep, and I made the quarterbacks go lead up in there too. So I was a real caveman that year.
Speaking of which, we talked about him putting in the naked and boot. While we're talking about it, I should have mentioned we did run a wide receiver tunnel screen this last week.
Yeah.
So I was excited to see that too because we talked about wanting to see more nakeds, wanting to see more screens. So I was excited about seeing that too. But I agree with everything, and I think you had something to say about losing Cyrus doesn't help. And I don't even know if you know this, Seth, but I'm sure you saw the picture on Twitter or social media or whatever of Cyrus' elbow. It was broke. There's no doubt. That poor kid.
I know, poor guy, dude.
And the funny, it's not funny, but I screenshot that picture and I sent it to a guy that works for me that broke his elbow in the exact same way, thinking he could beat me in a foot race about a year ago. Tripped over his own feet and fell. So shout out to Jordan, Mr. Athletic.
Yeah, they're highly competitive over there at the Rollo office in Hall.
Hey, I tried to tell him, I said, dude, I'm 43 years old. I don't need to be running. I can beat you. So, he had the funny thing was calling his wife, and she's a school teacher. And I had to call her like 2 or 3 times. She finally answered. And I said, hey, I'm taking your husband to the hospital. He broke his arm. Which hospital y'all need me to take him to? And she told me, and we hung up the phone, and then she texts me and says, how did he break his arm? And I just text back, I said, you're going to have to talk to him about that. I'm not having that conversation. So, Mark, tell us about the good, bad, and ugly of the A&M defense versus that powerful New Mexico offense.
Look, I mean, it's when we were at Carthage, this, Matt, there's just some games during the year you just like, God, they're not even competitive. It's like you play center and you're like, all right, I'll get my stats off of it, but there's not a lot of grading that can go on just because of it's such an inferior opponent. Not a knock to center. That was them one year. They're highly competitive other years, I guess. But just looking at it, I think the good that I liked was Malik Silla. I mean, another D lineman. It's like, who's it going to be? It's Cassius Howell, it's Stewart, it's Turner, it's Nick Scorton. Nick's kind of been the consistent, most dominant player, but every week, Regis, every week it's like a new D-line guy, and I love that. And I coached D-line for years, and anytime you have guys like that you put new people into the fold, and they just still perform, and it's a new guy each week, that says a lot about what makes this team tick. And on the defensive side of the ball, our D-line makes this team tick. Good D-line play makes everything better. It makes your linebackers better. It makes your secondary better. And so that was my good. Just another D-line guy. We'll just call it like it is because we don't even know who it's going to be this week. It's just another D-line guy. My bad. I mean, what? We gave up a field goal. That sucked. And then look, the guys on staff and the players, they are pissed about that because they want the shutout.
Sure.
You don't get many opportunities in this day and age of offensive football to really get shutouts, and so, but that was a bad deal. And the ugly, man, I don't really the penalties. You always can harp on that, but I will just say I'm gonna piggyback on Matt's because what's hard to watch as a coach, it was the body language as soon as Connor came in. And I'll just say this about that: I want you to go back to championship culture and what Elko has to eventually complete the process of was. If you go back to Jalen Hurst and Tua Nagasaki, when they were there at Alabama, and how that whole dynamic went. One guy gets yanked in the championship game, the other guy comes in and freaking performs. Then there's an injury, and the other one guy comes back and performs again. That's the makeup that it takes to win championships. And if you got guys that don't have that makeup, there's an old rule in the Carthage defensive office. You're either coaching it or allowing it to happen. And you can eliminate one of those pretty quick. So I didn't like that. And I would say the other ugly thing, and this kind of deals with the podcast, the other ugly thing is there was only one guy who said Marcel was going to be the guy from the very beginning of the year, and that was a defensive guy.
Geez.
So I'm just saying, I mean, I tried to tell y'all that Marcel was the guy.
Okay. All right. So, Brad, let me ask you this. Because me and Seth talked about this, because we're always looking at the transfer portal in this new day and age of college football. Me and Seth both agreed that tailback, like New Mexico's offense was not great, but I love that tailback. That kid ran hard. That kid played physical, and I know
Four-star recruit.
Yeah, I know he went to Oklahoma and all that, and I know he got in some legal trouble.
Yeah. Well,
but man, I'm not sure. I might not pick up the phone and say, hey man, what are you doing your senior year?
Well, and here's the deal, Matt. It works in our favor because the only people, there's nobody that wants to stay in Las Cruces. They're all trying to leave, so it's all good.
It is. So,
if you can get past the feedlot between Las Cruces and El Paso, you're home free.
There you go. All right, so we're going to talk real quick about our predictions versus reality, just because I think, I picked 52-0. We didn't get there. I think we talked about, I think we all, if we played with the starters the whole game, no doubt we'd score 100 on those guys. But we talked about Elko and Klein. They know what they have. They know what they have the next 2 weeks, and they can't risk going down another running back or another key player with the 2 SEC games we still have left on the schedule. So my pick was going to be Bussy. I went to that well multiple times. I'm telling you, that kid has a high ceiling. We haven't even scratched the surface of what that kid can do. But I was wrong on both accounts. So Mark, tell us about your prediction and how it unfolded.
Yeah, I kind of gave in to the narrative of we're going to blow them out. And, that's a bad place to be. And I remember one time coming down from the box at halftime, and we're up 28-0 on a team, and we're all pissed off. Defense is pissed off. They held the ball too long. The offense is mad because they hadn't scored 40-something points. That's a real bad state to get in. I think when I go back and watch the film, I had predicted 55-7. I just figured we would give one up late with different people in the game. But you got to be careful about getting in that mode. And we've said all year that Elko has kind of a plan, and it's not a today plan. And I think if you go back and look at the film, they were trying to do some things to prepare themselves for the next 2 weeks. And yeah, we can draw at mistakes and stuff, but I think that they really weren't as worried about the score. Would they have liked to have scored more? The other factor is you jump up 24-0, and you can't lie to kids. They know. They're like, man, these guys are terrible, and then they kind of let their guard down a little bit. They came out of the gate the right way. It wasn't like, oh my gosh,
hey,
the first quarter at 7-0. That would have been more scary to me.
But I will say this: we've talked about Wigman and how he's responded. Silla was a 4-star coming out of high school too. He was, everybody said he was a stud, and he probably hasn't gotten the playing time he wanted. But that's a kid that took advantage of his opportunity.
Absolutely.
Even Elko said in his post-game conference there that he said, man, it's hard not to say we probably need to look at giving that kid a few more snaps after the way he played. So that's just an example of taking advantage of opportunities and playing like it's your Super Bowl or not. So
yeah, and the other quarterback I thought looked real good.
I'm sorry?
The last quarterback that came in.
Oh, yeah, no, he showed.
Dude, he came in ready to roll.
Yeah.
He was blowing shot doubles. I mean,
what was your prediction versus reality, boss?
Well, my prediction was 55-7. Go ahead, Seth.
Yours was 57. Mine was 55-0. Yeah, so we were all kind of in the same boat. I thought after that first quarter it was going to happen, but yeah, definitely. But I will say this: in the second quarter, I think we threw something like 12 or 13 just pure drop back passes, like not even play action, not even no RPO. It was total. They took the second quarter and said, drop back game time. We're going to work this in, throw the curl routes, the timing routes, the intermediate, which there were some good things there. So, yeah, if they'd have just decided to do it, it would have been 55-0. But I really do. I had my player of the game as Marcel Reed, and while I don't think he looked dominant, I saw enough to make me go, okay. I saw things happen that he didn't do early. The seam route to the tight end, the hot throw to the bootleg guy, some timing throws were really well done where he didn't hold on to it. He let it rip right on the curl, right when the curl was turning. So that was good to see. But yeah, 55-0 to Marcel Reed, player of the game. Not quite, but maybe. I don't know. Who's a player of the game in a game like this? I mean.
All right, so we're going to move on to Auburn. I think, we've all talked. This is a nerve-wracking game. You're going to Auburn. It's a night game. We know they don't score a lot, but their defense is solid. And, they pulled off some humdingers in that stadium at night. I mean, they've upset Alabama multiple times and when they weren't supposed to. And so you look at their record, they're 4-6 overall. So really, they're playing for their bowl life. If they win against us and somehow pull off a miracle against Alabama, they get in the bowl game, which is probably what they're preaching to those kids this week. And they're 1-5 in conference. So, it's really easy for people that don't understand, commentators, whatever, reporters, to say, oh, A&M should blow this one out. This is top of the conference versus the bottom of the conference, all that. But, man, they've got some players on that team, especially on the defensive side. I'll let Mark talk about their offense, but I watched film today, and they've got some kids that look really stinking good on the defensive side of the ball. They got a defense coordinator we might be familiar with, likes to run the 3-down in the worst times of the game. Maybe he'll do that for us Saturday night. We can only hope.
I don't think so.
Yeah, but they do run some 3-down. They run an under 3-down look, but they base out of that 4-2-5 a lot. They're not giving up a bunch of yards on the ground, which isn't great for us because we've talked about how run heavy we are. They're giving up about 100 yards a game on the ground, 200 yards through the air. So they're keeping their opponents to about 300 yards total yardage per game. And in 2024, that's not a bad defense. And so they'll get after you on the pass game. They've got 24 sacks on the year, and that their number one person on that leading with sacks is a sophomore defensive end, Keldrick Falk. He's a 4-star defensive end out of Alabama, and he's he's exactly what you expect out of a defensive end. Long, can definitely get some reach on you. Their leading tackler, which I found interesting, is a senior linebacker, Darian Moss, I think is how you pronounce it. And he transferred from Duke. So I'm really hoping he doesn't have a great game, because then I'm going to question, Elko, how did we let a guy transfer from Duke to Auburn, not Duke to A&M? And then they've got 10 INTs led by their sophomore cornerback, Kellen Lee. He's a former 4-star out of Georgia. So they've got some guys up front, especially up front. I'll be honest, they don't necessarily scare me in the back end of that defense as much, but that front 6-7 definitely can get after you. So we're gonna have to play a physical ball game. We're gonna have to, I wouldn't say that their D line's on the same level as South Carolina, but it's a top half of the SEC defensive line for sure. So what are you seeing, Seth?
Yeah, I'll just echo what you saw. That this would be if we were a team that could throw the ball prolifically, I would feel a lot better about the matchup. I do think if we can get away from it, like if we can separate from them, we're going to have to see the passing game take a pretty big step forward. Which there were, watching the New Mexico State game, you can see where there could be that opportunity happen. If we can, like I said, if we can make some safeties pay, if we can punish a safety a couple of times for being a little too aggressive and get a couple of long, explosive touchdowns in the passing game, then they have no shot. But if we don't do that and it takes grind it out, it's going to be a 4-quarter white knuckle ride all the way to the finish line. And they're very solid up front. Like you go back and watch the Vanderbilt game, which I thought was recent. I love watching that game because it was recent, and Vanderbilt they're not exactly the same offense as us, but it's similar in style. Not we don't do the true triple, but they use formations and motions and things. And then also on top of that, Vanderbilt Clark Lee is a Mike Elko guy, so he runs the same defense we do. And the one positive out of that was Vanderbilt held them to 7. So just a couple of weeks ago. So I know Clark and Coach Elko or Coach Lee and Coach Elko are on the phone, or coaches that know each other talk to each other, especially if they're in the same scheme. And I hope that whatever Clark had on Vanderbilt, he's sharing the wealth, so to speak, with Coach Elko. But anyway, long story short, yes, you echoed it. Very athletic in the front seven. Very athletic. Reminds me. I don't think they're, like you said, I don't think they're South Carolina, but it reminds me a little bit of Arkansas defensively. Maybe I think a little. So I think if you've got Arkansas here and South Carolina there, Auburn kind of slots in between up front. And so yes, they held while Vanderbilt won the game, they held Vanderbilt to 88 yards rushing, and they're averaging 144 a game. So that's what running the ball is going to be tough, and so I feel like the passing game for us to not have a white knuckle ride, we're going to have to punish a safety a couple times. So
Yep.
but yeah, that's what I see.
I agree. Mark, what you got? What do they look like on the offensive side of things?
Well, I mean, if you know who their coach is, it's RPO special. I mean, they're going to do a lot of that stuff. They have a good ground game, a really
lot of
good
motions, I'm assuming.
a lot of motions, a lot of RPO stuff. So they're going to keep you honest in that. I kind of looked at their offense just an overall in a season, and I kind of call it the Russell Wilson offense. They're really good in between the 20s, but then they figure out ways not to score. Either they stall out, kick a field goal, or they turn the ball over a lot. So if you remember, Matt, one of the kids that I coached in the last couple of years that I was coaching at Carthage was Kip Lewis he was at Oklahoma, and Oklahoma's really they were beat by Auburn, and Kip has a pick 6 against them. They run an empty check where they show them what we used to call red. Everybody's going, and the way that you run that is you blitz until someone identifies you to take you, and then you bail, and he bailed and picked it off and took it back to the house, and that's been their Achilles heel. It's not that they're not good. It's not that they don't put up yards. They do, and that's tough because, how many chances does our offense get? I think this game is on the defense. Yeah, I think anything after this is going to take a combination of both groups.
Sure.
This one's on the defense. The defense is going to have to go in there and tackle well, not have dumb penalties, and get them off the field, whether it's by the turnover or whatever, but get them off the field and give our offense the ball back and give them multiple opportunities because that's really what's made Auburn the team that they are by their record. Because you can watch them at times and think, man, they're pretty good. And they are. They got a quarterback that can throw the RPO really well. They got a running back that can run really well. They got SEC talent up front. So it's not easy, but you just got to hope that the magic doesn't happen for them at Jordan-Hare and that they suddenly have their night where they don't turn it over and they you were looking at red zone. You saw red zone when you showed it earlier?
Yes.
Auburn's at the bottom of that list, and A&M has been really.
They're still there.
Yeah, and so that's the key. I think that Auburn will have drives in this game, and battered Aggie syndrome is going to be. People are going to be upset, but just hold on. hold them to field goals, turn them over late, get them off the field, those type of things, and keep the scoring down, which everybody who's beaten Auburn this year, that's really where it's been. They've kept the scoring down. And even Oklahoma, who is god awful on offense for whatever reason. I'm not picking on Oklahoma. Just they've had their reasons why, but they were able to outscore them because they generated a defensive touchdown. If we can generate a defensive touchdown, we will be able to bandage our battered Aggie syndrome wounds, and we will move on to Thanksgiving, and we will be very thankful to be where we're at that point. But it is not going to be easy. Again, this is a good offensive mind. This is good offensive talent. But for whatever reason, they tend to make some mistakes, and we've got to force them into those mistakes. And like you said, Elko's already seen his scheme on tape. I don't even know that he has to pick up the phone. When you see your own scheme run by one of your guys, you know what they're doing before they know what they're doing. When you're watching it on film and you see how they attacked it, you see what hurt them, you do some things to shore those things up. So it should be a good game. I mean, you're in November. You got a night game on a Saturday night on the road. You couldn't ask for more. I mean, don't be like the pundits and worry about records and all that. It's an SEC night game on the road at a storied SEC. This isn't just some new SEC school. This is a storied SEC school in a storied SEC stadium. It's a great opportunity. I think the guys in Aggie land, I think those Aggies are going to respond. And I think this is if I'm a defensive coach, this is what I'm telling my guys. If I'm a D-line coach, I'm like, it's on us this week, boys. We got to stop the run, and we got to get pressure on the quarterback. It's on us. And I'm a linebacker coach, I'm saying the same thing. If I'm a secondary coach, I'm saying the same thing. It is on us.
I think the key, and I'm not trying to step on your side of the line, but we've got to stay gap sound. Because he's going to, like you said, everything Hugh Freeze has ever done is going to be motions to get people's eyes out of place, and all of a sudden you're in the wrong daggum gap, and you've swallowed up by, and your hose. So. And
I'll say this, going back to what Seth said about the scheme of Vanderbilt and us, one of the things about some of the things that Mike Elko does with his two-man looking stuff is really what Elko kind of became because of the RPO game. That ability to hold that guy down there tight against the line of scrimmage with help, so that when he gets run away and they're trying to stick it behind you, he's already up on him. And our secondary has done a great job of attacking that stuff. I could see us getting a pick six off something like that. Seriously, because our guys have done a great job of jumping that stuff and being ready for it. I don't worry about this defense being gap sound other than the edge run. If you look at our weaknesses defensively, it is edge running, where they go full zone on the outside, and sometimes we have a soft edge because of the way we play some tight man stuff. And then, I'm mentioning it again, got to be ready for back out, although I'm not as scared about it with this. But that this is an offensive mind that's going to draw some stuff up. So, But again, they got to go play well. They got to go play well. They cannot go lay an egg like they did in South Carolina. They're going to have to come out ready to tackle and ready to play. And it's not about hype, and it's not about mojo, and it's not about playing the intro song or whatever. It's about being a fundamentally sound football team that can play well, man for man.
Yep, I agree with you. Well, let's go over our predictions. So I think I'm with you, Mark. I think it's going to be a defensive battle. I think it's going to be a tight ball game. I'm going with the Aggies 20-10, and it may be tighter than that. I just think that Auburn will be able to move the ball at times on us just because of Hugh Freeze, and he is a good offensive-minded coach. As much craziness as he does off the field, he does know how to execute on the old X's and O's and all the motions and all those things. So I think he will be able to move the ball, but I do think he'll stall out. I could see him scoring 10, maybe 13 points. I don't think they can get the end zone more than once unless we just have, a bad night. And I think it's tight until the fourth quarter, and I think we score a touchdown late to kind of pull away. I could see it being like a 13-10 until late in the fourth quarter, and maybe we bust one finally or something like that. And actually, So I think we're going to have to lean heavy on the run game, mainly because I just think that this is one of those games that I think Elko knows they can't score a ton. So if we just don't do anything stupid and put ourselves in bad situations, we'll be all right. So I think Daniel's going to be my player of the game. I think he's going to have about 120 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. But I'm kind of with you, Seth, on our real running back number 2 is our quarterback, and so he's going to have a good game running the ball too, and really reading that in and making good decisions on the pull or the give. So that's my prediction for the game. What you got, Seth?
I'm going to go with – I had a similar thought as you. I think we're going to hold them to 1 touchdown. I think we're going to score 3. I think that third one might be late, and so it will be a white-knuckle ride to get there. So I'm going to go with 24-10, say it's 17-10 until late, and finally we have that drive that pushes us through. I'm hoping that I'm wrong, and I'm hoping we come out like the Florida game, hit a couple passes early, and are up big at halftime, because I don't think they have the capability to do what Florida did and get back in the game.
No.
That was a full strength Florida with Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway at quarterback, which is unlike any Florida lately that anybody else has played. So anyway, it's definitely, and I think that once again, like you mentioned, that I think that the connection, Mark, you said a great job about how they get yards but can't convert to points. I was looking at that Vanderbilt game. They outgained Vanderbilt by 100. They had 327, and Vanderbilt had 337, and Vanderbilt had 227 of total yardage, but they found a way to lose 17-7, even though they outgained them by 100 yards. So I think that could be. I hope that's not this type of game, because our defense needs that type of game. It needs in a big moment to go. Yeah, we're here. Like, we are the thing. We are the deal. Because even though the LSU game, they showed up big in the second half, that wasn't 4 quarters of it. I want to see 4 quarters of it. I want to see domination and defense travels. That's what you need to happen. So 24-10, and I'm going to go. I don't know if he'll be the player of the game statistically, but I feel like in this game, some of those big third down catches will be the big momentum, the big deal. So I'm going to go with Jabri Barber as my guy, because I think he might get us a few of them first down conversions early, keep the chains moving, and move the sticks for us. So,
Mark, what you got, boss?
Right.
What's your prediction?
So look, I try to think about this game for Auburn. So I'm gonna go 24-12. I'm gonna give Auburn 12 because they're ugly with the way they do things. I'm gonna give them an ugly score. So I'm gonna say 24-12. I'm gonna say the player of the game. I'm gonna kind of go back to where I started this season. Is gonna be our boy Will Lee, but I think it's gonna come off of a D line. One of them other guys going to do something and force a bad throw, and he's going to get a pick 6. So I'm even having the offense only scoring 17, but we still win the game. Again, tackle, and the other thing is they're going to speed us up, so we're going to have to be really good at communications. But these are the things I've seen from the Aggies. York has done just a masterful job at linebacker, getting our guys in the right spot. That's going to be on test Saturday night to make sure that we are lined up with the quick flow offense that's calling stuff quickly and making sure everybody's ready to go. So, 24-12 Aggs. Can't wait for Monday.
All right. Well, once again, guys, appreciate y'all listening. If you're in Northeast Texas this weekend, you want to come watch the game with us, we'll be at the McCann Bar and Grill there, off McCann there in Longview. So come and join the Deep East Texas A&M Club, and if you're not, watch it. If you make the road trip, be loud for the maroon and white and gig 'em. And thanks for listening.
Tracy Amigos, former football coaches turned insurance agents, talk about Texas Aggie football.